So today I'm going to show you how I took my client Rayhan from skinny fat to shredded in just 16 weeks and the protocols we used with his training, diet and cardio to get him into this shape. So if we look at Rayhan's starting point here, he was 71 kilos. But if we look, he had a bit of a skinny fat physique. So he lacked muscle, but he had a high body fat percentage. He was unsure whether he should be cutting, whether he should be bulking. That was where my goal was, to just give him total clarity. So previously, he was sort of doing a dirty bulk. He was basically eating whatever he wanted. He was having takeaways, curries for dinner. He was feeling bloated all the time and he was unhappy with his physique considering he was training and following some sort of diet, but he just wasn't seeing any results that he was happy with. When he started with me, his training was very suboptimal. He was training like 3 times a week, but he was just doing a push-pull leg split. So he was only hitting every muscle group once a week and he wasn't training with much intensity, using progressive overload, and his form and tempo wasn't the best. So if we look at the starting plan, the strategy, right? If we look at the nutrition that I started him on, put him on about 2,104 calories, having 76 grams of protein, 211 carb, 50 grams of fat. We kept his protein high to make sure that we could build and maintain muscle during this phase, but also to keep him very full and satiated. I put him in around about 300-400 calorie deficit compared to the foods that he was having before he started, the rough calories that he was eating. We split these calories into 3 whole meals a day, consuming around 600-700 calories in each meal, and then having 1 snack, which was as a protein shake and a piece of fruit in the day. Examples of his 3 whole meals were, I'm gonna put some images up on the screen, but he was having like eggs and bread for breakfast, maybe some yogurt, or he was having chicken and rice meals, beef and pasta. We gave him basically lots of options and alternatives so that he never got bored. We could always fit foods into his meal plan that he enjoyed. We just kept within the calories and similar macros, not identical, but roughly always trying to hit that 150 grams at least of protein, 2 times his body weight in kilos at least. Now, the reasons why we gave him options and alternatives was so that he wouldn't get bored of his diet, but also allow him a bit of flexibility, right? He was a busy entrepreneur, running his own business, had a family, had a kid, married, so he was going out on the weekends and socializing. So we basically made it so that we would put protocols and plans in place so that when he would eat out, he would send me the menu, we would pick choices on the menu that would allow us to still hit these calories in the day. It would just maybe be that, right, instead of having the snack, we'd maybe take out the snack and contribute those calories to the dinner, or maybe removing some of the carbs in one of the bigger meals and contributing them to dinner, as that dinner would generally be a bigger meal, maybe 800 to 1,000 calories. So in the days when he wasn't eating on plan, he was still eating within the calories, just maybe his macros weren't quite perfectly lined up, and he was maybe, instead of eating the whole foods that we were eating, you know, in these big meals, he was maybe eating a bit more processed foods. But generally, he absolutely smashed it with the meals out, and that was just because we put protocols in place so that he could enjoy them and still make progress. So once again, if we look at his training, we moved from a push-pull legs to a 3 times full body split, training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, giving him 1 day's rest recovery in between each session. These sessions were, he only had 60 minutes to train. Like I said, he was a busy working professional, had a family, didn't want to spend hours in the gym. So we made sure these sessions were quick, 60 minutes, hitting big compounds like your deadlifts, your leg presses, your dumbbell presses, and then maybe at the end finishing with using supersets for smaller muscle groups like your arms, your side delts, just so we could really maximize the time that he had in the gym, not wasting hours on, say, a cable chest fly, right? And the main goal at the beginning was to provide the muscle with the best stimulus. This is gonna come from improving your form and tempo. So straight away I said to him, right, let's reduce the load, because he wasn't completing full range of motion, his tempo could be better. So we reduced the load to allow us to provide the muscle with the best novel stimulus, which was just training with intensity and good range of motion, then enforcing progressive overload. So once I was happy with his training and I was like, right, we're at a good spot here, then we looked at each week, you know, increase the reps that we were doing, increase the weight, and that just came from logging each session. And then we knew, right, if we're getting stronger each week and our body weight's coming down, we're definitely going to be going through some recomp phase where we're losing body fat and building muscle at the same time, which, as you can see from the pictures, we definitely did. So surprisingly, if we look at his expenditure, I didn't give him a single step goal. I didn't give him any cardio. And this was because I collected data at the beginning and I knew, right, he was eating quite a lot of calories, big takeaways, And I knew, right, if we just cleaned up his diet, that would put him in enough of a deficit so we could get the most out of the least. We start losing weight without having to do cardio and steps. And that just gave us more runway. So further down the line, when we hit a plateau to create a bigger calorie deficit, I could just get him doing a bit more cardio, you know, introducing it or doing some steps consistently. And again, that allowed us to keep his food a little bit higher. So we got the most out of the least initially and really focused on improving our training, getting the most out of that, and using that almost as a form of output. Is like, right, if we can increase your training intensity, you're going to be burning more calories in the session, thus building more muscle, thus burning more fat. Win-win. So if we look at the progress made through this transformation, so halfway point, 7 weeks in, we'd actually managed to lose 7 kilos. We'll drop some pictures up here of the halfway point. At this point, 7 kilos in 7 weeks for him is quite an aggressive rate of loss. Losing a kilo a week is more than 1% of his body weight, which is sort of the guidelines I recommend. Now, I was happy with this for multiple reasons. One, his strength in the gym was improving. So his performance was getting better, so I knew he was maintaining muscle. You know, sometimes if you're losing at too fast a rate of loss, you can be sacrificing muscle. But because we were logging our lifts, I knew, right, he's getting stronger in the gym, so we're not losing any muscle. Also, based on the pictures, we could see that he was obviously losing body fat, looking a lot leaner than when he started. Also, because of his starting point, I knew, right, this guy's not going to have to be dieting for a long, sustained period of time, like 6, 7, 8 months. Let's almost be quite aggressive with this diet, get some body weight off quickly so that we can be ahead of the game. So that if the rate of loss slows down, it's not the end of the world because we're ahead of where we're at currently and he's feeling great for it. So as well, at this point, we had introduced cardio. So he was just doing 30 minutes 3 times a week. Most of the time it was post-workout on the Stairmaster. And his food had dropped quite a decent amount, you know, 400 odd calories down to 1633. Again, as you can see here, the protein, trace protein just came down because all we'd done is removed some of the carbs from his breakfast and his snack, which just resulted in his carbs coming down, fats minimally being adjusted. And those carbs we removed furthest away from training. So in general, he was training in the afternoon, so we removed them. Carbs from his first meal of the day and the snack, and then his pre-workout meal and post-workout meal still had a lot of carbs to keep him fueled for the sessions. One of the biggest things that we had to sort of get over, the biggest obstacle, was the fact that, right, we're actually quite light at this point. You know, we got down to 64 kilos, 65 kilos, and we still got a decent amount of body fat to come. So this was where we had to embrace the fact that, right, mate, we're going to have to get quite light. If I'd have told him at the beginning, right, you're going to have to get into the 50 kilo mark, he'd have punched me in the face, right? But it was about focusing on the end goal. It was like, right, we're trying to clear the canvas. We're trying to strip all that body fat off. And then once we've done that, we're putting ourselves in the perfect position to grow muscle. You know, if you don't take all that body fat off, and if at this point he had just started bulking, he'd have gone back to 70, he'd have looked exactly the same. So I just had to drill into him. This is why it's so important having someone there to give you advice who you trust, but also to give you that clarity on, right, I'm just going to do what he says. I'm going to trust the process. Because again, of all the social proof on my page, he knew, right, if I do what this guy says, I'm going to get that result. And that's exactly what we did. So kudos to him for just sticking it out and accepting, right, I'm going to have to get low, but I'm going to get shredded. And as you can see from the pictures, it paid off, right? At this point as well, I must say, no changes had been made to his training. All we were doing were enforcing progressive overload. You know, we'd nailed his form by this point. His form, tempo, everything was perfect. It was about each week trying to take a rep here and there, you know, add 1.25 kilos, because at this point it was 7 kilos down, but lifting more weight than when he started. So we knew he'd built muscle and we weren't losing any muscle, which is how we got the crazy recomp. And then it was also about, right, still enjoying social weekends. You know, he was still going out every weekend with his family, enjoying food, but still making progress. Because by this point as well, we'd sort of understood his body. We understood, right, the changes that we would have to make to his food throughout the day to allow him to eat out and still make progress. So if we look here, the final dig, the final shred, as we say here. So this is how we had to reach a low of 57 kilos. And at this point, the food was quite low. So again, 1438 calories, another 200 odd calorie drop from there, 159 grams protein, 73 carbs, 47 fat. So as we can see, the fats and the protein are staying pretty similar. All we're doing again is dropping the carbs around his, you know, not around training, but at this point, right, carbs are going to be a lot low. And this is where you sort of just have to embrace the fact that at the end of any diet, to get as lean as he did there, you're going to be on low food. Same with expenditure. We'd had to bump that up to 45 minutes times 4 a week. Still relatively not that high. Also, he wasn't having to do we didn't really count his steps because again, he was a busy guy. He didn't have time to go out on a walk. We just made sure he'd hammer that cardio. And then his training, again, nothing changed with his training. All we did was lower his volume. So instead of doing 3 sets per most exercises. We'd bumped this down to 2, and we were just really focusing on maintaining strength during this final bit of fat loss when he was in a good aggressive deficit. And again, at this point, look, he's 14 kilos down from when he started. To be lifting, if you're maintaining strength week on week, pound for pound, he's getting stronger. So this is where I said to him, look, mate, we're just focusing on getting this little bit of fat loss. Don't worry if we lose a rep here and there, because that is going to happen. But then as soon as we start the reverse, that's where the strength comes back up and really emphasize the performance aspect of things. But for now, it was right. Let's take that last bit of fat loss off. So as we can see from the pictures, at his new low at 57 kilos, shredded, but very flat. Glycogen stores are low, feeling quite fragile. This is where the fun begins, the reverse diet. He absolutely nailed this phase. As you can see, he did exactly what I say, and I always say to people, when you finish that diet, give yourself 2-month window, 1-month window of trying not to go on holiday and just staying on plan. Because as we've done here, we've gone up, he spent 2 weeks slowly going up. We went from 57 in that picture there to 58 kilos here, just as lean, but just looks way fuller, way more pumped, feels way better because he's eating 2,100 calories, which is what he started at. So we didn't go straight from 1,400, adding 600 in straight away. We added 300, gave it 3-4 days, body weight went up a little bit, then it plateaued, then we added another bit, let it go up, then plateau, then add another bit. So it's just getting constant feedback, assessing his body weight. We don't want body weight to fly up. We want a nice little increase, then hold, increase, hold. And we were just riding that out over those 2 weeks. And performance was going up in the gym, instantly felt way better, looked way better. Win, win, win. Again here, cardio had been tapered down to 20 minutes for 3 times a week versus the 45 that he was doing for 4 times a week. And again, now we're just, once we get that initial bump, we're just slowly pushing up, trying to gain 1 to 1.5 kilos a month. Again, getting visuals. This is where getting physique pictures is so important, because if you're gaining 1.5, maybe even 2, but you're looking really good, holding that body composition, that's fine. But if you're gaining 3, 4, 5, and you're taking physique pictures and you're losing that aesthetic, lean body composition that we want, then we're gaining at too fast a rate, because the rate at which you're going to gain muscle is going to be a lot slower than what you can gain fat. So it's making sure that we're just going up quite slowly. And again, all these food bump ups that we're doing is just increasing the sizes of the meals. So we basically went back to having 3 whole big meals a day with a snack. We're not adding in donuts, cakes, snacks. We're adding in whole foods that are going to help improve his training. Again, that was a big thing, improving training performance and maintaining his abs. That came from just slowly pushing up, and this came from correctly fueling himself. Training hard, using that extra food, then 500 calories, to increase his strength. And if we're increasing our strength each week, we know, right, we're building muscle, especially with a slow rate of gain. So he absolutely nailed that phase and put himself in the perfect position to slowly creep up, keeping gaining 1 to 1.5, and then we're just riding these calories. These calories are going to go all the way up to 3,000, but it's not a race to get your food as high as possible. It's about slowly pushing up, which is exactly what we're going to do over the next few months now. So if we look at the result that we achieved over the 16 weeks, not only did we go from 71 kilos to 58 kilos, we dropped a load of body fat, we built a load of muscle, and we did this because he was so consistent. I put this result down to him being consistent every single day, having total clarity on what he needs to do every single day with regards to training, diet, steps, and cardio. The day-to-day communication, so we could plan around his social life. Again, asking any questions with regards to training, diet, etc. Managing daily habits, simple things like improving his sleep quality, eating whole foods versus processed foods, getting in a bit more steps, being proactive rather than getting the car to the shops, going and doing some steps. And then also just trusting the process. He had total faith in me throughout the whole process. He literally did everything that I said. He was a robot, and that's why he got the results. We were able to eat out every week because he was on it 90% of the time. And then 10% of the time where he'd go out for his meals, he'd enjoy himself there, but he would put protocols into place so we could still make progress. It's what you do for that 10% of the time when you're off plan. That is what dictates whether you get a physique transformation. If we had have lost a kilo Monday through till Saturday, gone out Saturday night, gone on an absolute mad one, gained that kilo back, we'd never get a transformation. But we'd lose maybe a kilo and a bit in the week. And then maybe we'd maintain or go up 0.1, 0.2 on the weekend, which is absolutely minor. Credit to him for trusting the process and sticking it out. And now it's all about setting new goals. Once you get lean, it's about, right, what are we doing next? Because he's in a lean position where he's in the perfect scenario to building muscle. So we're just slowly going to push up over the next 6 months. And then he's got a holiday in Egypt in 8 or so months. So we're just slowly going to push up and then go through another 8-week diet. Ideally, we'd probably push up for longer, but based on timelines, he's got a holiday coming up. He wants to be shredded for that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of setting goals once you're lean, because it's so easy to rebound horribly out of that phase. And before you know it, you're back at 71 kilos, you've lost your abs, and you're having to diet again. Whereas we're slowly going to push up, and he's never going to have to do a hard diet like that. We'll probably push up to maybe 64 kilos, maybe 65 as a max. There's no need to go heavier than that. And then we'll diet back down. And then the next off season we'll improve again, and it's just rinse and repeat. Dieting down and then improving, getting stronger in your off seasons, building muscle. The process never ends. So if you're like Rayhan was, you're in a position where you don't have any clarity, you don't know whether you should be cutting, you don't know whether you should be bulking, you don't know what you should be doing with your training, you don't know what you should be eating, you don't know what cardio you should be doing to achieve a physique transformation, you're not alone. All of these guys, like on my page, came to me in these same situations. They didn't know what to do. We put a plan in place based on their lifestyle and got straight to work. If they can do it, there's no reason why you can't. If you're interested in getting a transformation and working with myself, either drop me a message on Instagram, drop a comment on the YouTube here, or fill in my type form below and I will be in contact with you and we will be well on our way to achieving a result. And who knows, maybe I'll be doing a YouTube video on you in a few months' time.